Hong Kong. Story is from CNN. Pro-democracy activists took their fight on Thursday to the doorstep of Hong Kong's chief executive, sitting down outside his office gates to express their dissatisfaction with him and the central government in Beijing. Some demonstrators say the next step could be occupying the inside of government buildings. And by the way, if you have not yet seen the photos or video from these protests,
it's huge.
It's tremendous. I mean, this makes Occupy look like nothing in comparison. If those of you who recall Occupy from a few years ago, Occupy Wall Street and Oakland and all these other various places.
Have you seen the pictures of the Hong Kong protesters cleaning up their messes too?
No, I heard about that though.
It's funny.
Very smart.
Maybe the climate change people could have figured that out in New York.
It would be a drastic move, but one protest leader said it might be necessary to get officials' attention and bring about change. We still can't get a normal, acceptable response, said student leader Joshua Wong, age 17. He told that to CNN. This is the final action for us. In some minds, the confrontation has been brewing ever since Hong Kong transitioned in 1997 from British to Chinese control. But tensions, and by the way, that 17-year-old would have just barely been born at that time. But tensions have risen after a late August decision giving Beijing control over the slate of Hong Kong chief executive candidates in 2017. Current chief executive C.Y. Leung says that year's election is good for citizens because it will let the city's 5 million eligible voters pick a winner rather than a 1,200-member committee stacked with Beijing loyalists that chose past leaders. Strong sentiments on the other side have spilled in recent days into large-scale, peaceful civil disobedience on the streets of the Asian financial hub. It's all been dubbed the Umbrella Revolution after umbrellas became symbols of the movement when they were used to shield against police tear gas and pepper spray on Sunday.
Yeah, I was about to say it's peaceful on one side.
Yeah.
Peaceful protest normally only comes from one side.
Huge crowds, and I still haven't seen an estimate. I'd like to see someone take a shot at estimating how many people have been in the streets.
I would love to see that. That would be so cool.
Huge is definitely an accurate term here because they're tremendous.
Oh my God. You have to see the pictures. Go on. There aren't a lot of pictures of it because the media is trying to shield you from it. Especially over there. They don't want
Is that right?
They don't want other countries to know about it. In fact, they've asked other countries not to show them any support.
Now, did you say people are sleeping in the streets? Like the protesters are out there 24/7? Did you say something about that?
Yeah, they're sleeping in the streets. They slept in the streets at least one night, but China's warned other countries not to support, them not to support illegal rallies. So we may see some the government may see some reaction from China.
We'll talk more about this here in moments. I don't imagine the U.S. government is going to be under attack from China. And obviously the pictures are getting out because people have internet in Hong Kong. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live. Well, maybe the government of China would like to stop the pictures from coming out of Hong Kong, but as long as people have internet access, they're going to keep coming. Over at the CNN story that we're sharing with you right now, there's a Twitter feed of folks just tweeting all kinds of information coming out of there. Apparently, the sun is rising as we speak out there. And they're about ready to roll into the 6th day of these democracy protests. Now, look, I'm no fan of democracy. Democracy is just two wolves and a sheep deciding on dinner. But as Lauren was pointing out I think it was during one of the breaks, I got a lot of respect for people who will get out in the streets and actually do something. Who will actually do more than just bitch and moan.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't agree with what the hippies stood for, but I certainly I love reading about it because it's like, yeah, rock on.
It's inspirational.
Yeah, it is. I just found this. So remember how I was saying that the Chinese government has basically said don't support these warned against supporting it. So it turns out on Monday, the British government called for the right to protest to be protected and for protesters to exercise their right within the law. And the call was echoed by the U.S., with White House
yeah.
spokesman Josh Earnest.
Well, the U.S. and British governments love protests when it doesn't happen in their country.
Oh, yeah.
So you remember how you were like, I don't think the U.S. government will see any retaliation, but I don't know. Looks like the U.S. is
Well, what are
that's
they
so
gonna
funny.
do? I mean, what kind of retaliation?
When we do it, they act the same way towards us.
Oh yeah, I mean,
So-
if the troops or the cops in Hong Kong weren't immediately obviously different looking, you wouldn't be able to tell, right? Like it looks like New York City. It looks like the same tactics.
They're all
the
wearing
same
the
thugs.
the same helmets and similar uniforms and the whole thing.
They got the tear gas. They got everything. That it's all very, very similar.
It's only the protesters you can tell the difference.
Huge crowds have called for true universal suffrage. This story from CNN.com, which is not just one vote per person, but no restrictions on candidates, and more generally called out Beijing for what they claim is its encroaching control on Hong Kong. And they've also demanded Leung's resignation. This is the top boss, the chief executive, if you will, in Hong Kong of their government. But accusing him of siding with China's central government rather than with the people of Hong Kong. That's why a few hundred students have moved from the main protest location to Leung's office. Now, there's another story. The story I'm sharing with you right now was actually from Wednesday. There's a story from today, an update. Hong Kong, this is from the AP, Hong Kong's embattled leader refused demands by pro-democracy protesters to resign on Thursday and instead offered talks to defuse a week of massive demonstrations that have grown into the biggest challenge to Beijing's authority since China took control of the former British colony in 1997. The Hong Kong Federation of Students said in a statement early Friday they plan to join the talks with the government focused specifically on political reforms, and they reiterated that the chief executive Leung Chun-ying stepped down, saying he had lost his integrity. A wider pro-democracy group that had joined the demonstrations, Occupy Central, welcomed the talks and also insisted that Leung quit. Occupy Central hopes the talks can provide a turning point in the current political stalemate, it said in a statement. However, we reiterate our view that Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying is the one responsible for the stalemate and that he must step down. Of course, he said that he will not resign. So it doesn't sound like the protests are going to go anywhere anytime soon.
Shocking.
And
he won't give up power?
No, of course
What?
not.
No.
That's crazy.
That is
a
what
man
every
with power
tyrant
won't
has
give
done up till now.
power?
I'm sorry, we don't talk over top of one another. What?
I was just saying that's what every tyrant's done up to this point.
Yeah, a man with power won't give up power? Shocking.
As protester Cyrus Koo, age 25, explained, we want to disturb the daily life of the chief executive. This back to the CNN piece. The activists are open to talks with the leaders, but not with Leung, said one of the movement's figureheads, Lester Shum, on Wednesday. He demanded the chief executive step down or else protesters will occupy different important government buildings. So that may be what we see happen this weekend, is the occupation of the actual government buildings.
Man, I'm scared for these people.
It marks a shift in
too.
location and strategy in the movement that had a large, constant presence in downtown Hong Kong. According to Kevin Chung, a 21-year-old student who helped sort recyclable trash near the main protest site, he said letting up is not an option. Quote, more pressure must be put on the government, otherwise they'll turn a blind eye to our actions. There is no clear end in sight, says CNN. The demonstrators haven't budged from their demands. If anything, they've ratcheted them up a few notches in their calls for Leung to step down. Yet both Hong Kong and Chinese officials have been adamant, refusing to move from their positions and calling the protests illegal. Suraj Katra, CNN reporter.
You mean the United States is supporting illegal protests? My God. Wow. Where is the rule of law?
I don't even get this. I mean, how can the U.S. government stand there and hypocritically support illegal protests when there are legal protests here that they bring out guns, dogs, tear gas, and every other witch thing, tanks?
It's the exact same way
they're such hypocrites.
that RT, the Russian television channel, supports all kinds of things in the United States, but they don't support those same things in Russia. It's just the states don't get along, and they do like to see trouble for the competing states out there.
You know what it is? It's that it's not a threat to their power.
That's true.
So, it's perfectly okay,
So I think this is fascinating, and hopefully we'll continue to follow this developing situation. To date, from CNN, 53 males and 30 females, this was written on Wednesday, have been injured in the protests, according to a government media
From the
officer.
number of people I saw out there, that's an incredibly good number.
A low number.
Yeah,
you mean.
really low.
The official would not comment on the nature or the extent of those injuries. The biggest clashes came on Sunday thus far. Aside from that day, things have been relatively calm and peaceful. Outwardly, it seems like leaders on both sides would like to keep it that way. Suraj Katra, CNN Eye reporter who works for a nonprofit in the city, said late Wednesday that demonstrators seemed exhausted but still high-spirited, and whether they were singing songs or applauding speeches. Sophie Richardson from the advocacy group Human Rights Watch said Hong Kong authorities have shown restraint aside from Sunday. She says that's not surprising. It's the biggest protest in the past 2 decades, but it's not the only one that they've dealt with. You know, protests like this make you wonder, what would it take to get this many people in the streets in the United States?
Why
no
are
clue.
Americans so apathetic? What is that?
Maybe it's because, things are really good in Hong Kong. The standard of living is quite
It's
high.
a great place to live.
So
I think there's a bigger illusion of freedom here.
I don't know. I have no answer
The people
to
are
this.
just suckers in the United States. They've been duped.
Well, they don't have. Okay, in Hong Kong, they have a very high standard of living. They do not have eagles. They do not have red, white, and blue flags. They do not have FA-18s flying over at their sporting events.
Not only that, but they've had a major change in government within
Right.
the last decade and a half.
Here in the United States, if you decide to stay sitting at a sporting event, when they say the Rockets' red glare, somebody will
beat
punch
you
you
up.
in the face.
Yeah.
Whereas in Hong Kong, if you say, I really don't like the rule from Beijing, nobody's going to have any problem at all.
Right, because it was only in 1997, less than 20 years ago, when Beijing took control of the country. And
Right.
that
And this country is controlled by Washington, D.C. and has your eyes full of stars and,
and
eagles.
has been for
and
over 200
spangled
years.
banners.
Yep.
But I think it's important to remind the federal government what they are effectively doing by supporting this protest. What they are doing is they're supporting a movement against the state. And that will incite more movements around the world against the state. They are effectively bringing about their own doom, and I am laughing. It is funny.
Well, this is one thing that I think is worth focusing on here, is that numbers are what make a difference.
It
Whether
is.
we're talking about protests or whether we're talking about winning elections, whatever, having people on your side is the most critical aspect to success.
Oh, gosh,
you
yeah.
can't get anywhere being the lone wolf out on the streets waving a honk if you hate taxes sign like I used to do down in Florida.
There's more than one picture of that.
I got my picture in the newspaper, but taxes are still here, right?
And we put it up at the radio station and laughed at you.
Oh yeah, okay, good for you. You're just jealous. You're just jealous that I had that I was able to go out and do something, and you cats just sit around and bitch and complain.
That's kind of how I felt when we did the independence thing. So Rob and I called a bunch.
You
of
mean the
people.
outreach?
Yeah, the outreach.
Yeah.
And Rob Matthias from the Rebel Love Show and I went out and did this, and at a farmer's market. But we had a big group that said they were going to come out, and nobody showed up. Where were you guys? Come on.
Well, that's what we need. We need more activists here. We
Yes.
need thousands
We
more
need doers.
activists here. Exactly. And the more thousands we get, the more real key doers will come out of those thousands.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.